So with the top not glued on, but just sitting on, wedged on around the fretboard, I have taped on that rubbing that I made. And drawn the outline of the lightning bolt that I wish to put on here. And what I'm going to do, is, you can't quite call that a scalpel, but take my craft knife and I'm going to cut through the paper onto the wood. I've watched some videos of people cutting F-holes into violins, and they can just use a knife like this to cut right through the wood. This is thicker and much harder than the wood that they're using, this piece of Tasmanian Blackwood, so I can't quite do that. As easy as that would be, it is not possible for me. Okay, if I've cut this properly, it should just come out now. There we are, and that is what my lightning bolt will look like. Before I put the top on, before I even get close to putting the top on, I want to make sure that I haven't forgotten to do this. I'm going to stain the inside of this cavity black, just because I think the space behind the, well, either an F-hole or in this case a lightning bolt should be dark. Well, I suppose it doesn't have to be, but I want it to be in this case. So I'm not going to use very much dye in doing this. Just enough to dye this relatively small space. Actually, I'm just going to, because this is contained, I'm going to pour a little bit in, just a very small amount, and then spread it around. And I'm not being too careful about spilling the occasional drop around here because it's all going to be covered up, so I can afford to be a little bit lazy. I've got all the black dye that I need into that cavity now, but black dye will fade over time unless there is a top coat over it. Just like if you just stained a guitar and then didn't put, say, a polyurethane coat or anything over it, that would fade over time. And I don't want that to, I mean, you won't really see it much anyway. You'll just see what you can see through the lightning bolt hole, but I don't want it to fade at all. So I am going to put a coat over it. Not a very heavy coat, in this case just some clear shellac, which is a very easy thing to apply. It's quite thin, it dries fairly quickly, so I'll just put 2 coats over that because it's not going to be subject to weather or anything. It's nicely protected inside there, but just enough to seal that dye and to stop it from fading too much. And I mean, you can apply shellac probably in several ways. You can do it with a brush, or you can do it as I'm doing it with basically a cotton ball wrapped in gauze, really. I guess it's gauze. It's a dressing. I got it from a chemist. You could probably get similar things from an art store. Actually, I'm just going to put 1 coat on because I'm putting it on really thickly. That should be enough just to provide a bit of protection against fading. There we are. I will let that dry. It dries quickly, one of the nice things about shellac. And then, well, while that's drying actually, I will turn my attention to cutting out the lightning bolt itself. It is a lot easier drilling through hardwood with a much skinnier bit, as I'm finding. So I'm just going to go all the way around this, not quite touching the edge, and I'll get even skinnier bits when I get, even thinner bits, what's the right way, skinnier bits when I get close to the points. Obviously don't do this on your workbench, obviously. Alright, so we're getting there. like I said, not on your bench. Here's something that I'm finding quite good at cutting into the quite narrow parts. Well, good, but with some drawbacks. It's the blade from a coping saw. And I'm just holding it on each side and pulling it back and forth. It is a little bit flexible, which is not ideal for this task. And it's got these little tabs that hold onto the saw, which are quite uncomfortable to hold. But it made me think what I'm going to do, actually, before I continue with this, is get a hacksaw blade. Because that is, well, it's also very thin, and it's also really rigid, and you can actually buy them with a handle that it fits into, or you can just wrap tape around it. But that, I think, would be ideal for cutting these lines. They are straight lines too, which a hacksaw would be ideal for. So it's getting late. I'll stop just now, and I'll carry on tomorrow once I've got one of those blades. It will delay things, but you know, it's good to have the right tool, and I'm pretty sure that will be the right tool for this job. So, good night. I'll be back tomorrow. I think I must have been having a bit of a silly moment. I was holding the coping saw blade in my hand, using it without the coping saw, saying, hey, this blade works really well, but it's difficult to hold with the hand when it's not in the saw. Why don't I just use an actual coping saw, Glenn? It is, after all, designed for that purpose, so it has worked well. Not perfectly smooth and everything at the moment, so I'm going to just use a needle file to get that a bit smoother, and then I will take to it with strips of sandpaper. Yes, silly. Why didn't that occur to me before? Anyway, on to it now. Alright, well, I've filed and sanded the inside edge of that lightning bolt quite a bit now. So I used the coping saw yesterday instead of going for a bandsaw, but I did make one more purchase that has helped, a hacksaw blade, but I did make one more purchase that has helped with that, and this is called a warding file. It's I think it's used by locksmiths actually, because it's thin and they use it to file away inside locks, maybe. I'm pretty sure that's what it's used for, but it's really handy here because it is so thin, and it's great for filing those edges reasonably smooth almost all the way to the end, because as I said, it's quite thin. And then I sanded that, and I've also sanded the inside of that pocket there, because I'm pretty much ready now to glue this on, which is kind of exciting. So that is the next step. Alright, so I'm not using Gorilla Glue this time, partly because it is, well, mostly because it is so messy. White glue of whatever variety, in this case Weld Bond, but use your favourite. I know Type Bond is very popular. Will not expand and make the kind of mess that I made the last time I glued on the top. Really important to get the glue all the way to the edges. The last thing you would, I mean, it doesn't matter if there are some gaps in here under the top because you can't see them, but you will see any gaps at the edges. And I think we're there. We'll get a little bit of squeeze out, but not a ridiculous amount. And the squeeze out you get when you press it down is all the squeeze out you're going to get. It's not going to expand. Again, this is where it's so good that I've got such a snug fit around that neck, because there's no way this can slide at all. Right, you can never really have too many clamps, but I think that will do a good enough job. I can see glue just poking out all around. Well, not quite actually. Is there anywhere I can move a clamp away from? There's a bit there where it's not being squeezed as tightly as I would like. See, I feel like I'm running out of clamps. Running out. Just enough. I think we're good. We'll come back when this is dry. The clamps are off. In fact, not only are the clamps off, but I have off camera just flipped it over and running around the bandsaw there. You can see the edges that are